Hi everyone, Jesse here with etrailer. Today we'll be taking a look at and I'll show you how to install the Airlift 1000 air helper springs on our 2018 Nissan Pathfinder. If you're like our neighbor today and you plan on towing with your Pathfinder, then you probably noticed that your rear end tends to sag a little bit. Even if you're not towing and you just have the rear end loaded, you'll notice that the back end will sit down a little lower than the front. And that's going to really affect your ride quality because a lot of your braking comes from the front of your vehicle and all of your steering comes from there. So adding these air helper springs will allow the back end to come up a little bit even if you're loaded down and even out that ride. With these springs, you have adjustability from 5 psi to 35 psi with the maximum load leveling capacity being 1,000 pounds. That's not going to add extra towing capacity to your vehicle. That just means that it's going to be leveled out up to 1,000 pounds. It's going to be tough to take a closer look at our springs while we're parked out here on the gravel, so I'll get unhooked from this trailer, pull the vehicle into the shop, and get it up in the air, and we'll take a closer look. As you can see, the airbag itself will sit inside your existing coil springs, which is really nice. We're not replacing anything that came from the factory. We're just adding on some extra support. And in order to fill up the bag, you have a fitting down here that's connected to a line that's going to go straight to the back. There's a T-fitting up here, which is kind of hard to see, but that connects both sides. And this is the fitting that you would fill up on. So since that T-fitting is there, you don't have to worry about setting both sides and getting them perfectly even. You just fill up with the one valve and you're good to go. If you're looking for a more convenient way to adjust the pressure in your airbags where you don't have to try to find a gas station that has a working air compressor to get them adjusted, check out an onboard compressor. Airlift makes a kit specifically designed for these bags that works perfectly. If you have any questions or concerns about these airbags or anything else we offer here at etrailer, feel free to reach out to us. We'd be happy to get you pointed in the right direction. As far as installation goes with these airbags, I've had some experience on other vehicles where it was very difficult to get the airbags slipped into the coil springs. Honestly, the Pathfinder is one of the easier vehicles to get it done. It does take quite a bit of hand strength. If that's not something that you're looking to do yourself, check out our dealer locator. You can find someone local to you that would be happy to get you set up. But if you are looking to see how these get installed, then just follow along and I'll walk you through the process. To begin our installation, you'll want to lift up your vehicle so that the tires are hanging or the suspension is hanging. So I'd recommend jacking it up and then putting some jack stands on the pinch welds. That'll allow us to get the maximum amount of room between our coils here to get our airbags installed. Now we'll get our airbag ready to slip into our coil. So you'll take the rubber cap off, keep that handy. You will need to reinstall it. And I like to have a zip tie on hand. What we want to do is get as much air out of it as possible. And in the instructions it'll say a hot dog shape, which is pretty difficult to get without the zip tie, and that's why I use the zip tie. So we'll get it squished down as much as we can. I'll try to get this zip tie at least in position so I can fold it and tighten it down. This can be pretty tricky to do, getting it all set up. Now we can fold it on the sides and tighten down that zip tie. Now we're ready to get this inside of our spring. I do recommend spraying some kind of lubricant on your coils. I'm using soapy water. It's just going to make it a little bit easier for us. And then we'll take our airbag. Our goal is to have this fitting facing down. So get this jammed in. Getting it started is usually the hardest part. And we got to get past our zip tie. You can use tools to help you. Just make sure you're not using anything sharp. You don't want to poke a hole through the bag. But we just want to get the entire airbag inside of here. Make sure your fitting isn't hitting anything in the process. Now we'll take this rubber circle here And it's called a protector. We need to slide this under our airbag and get it lined up with the hole on the bottom. Once you have that in place, I'm going to cut the zip tie. Cut that zip tie, and then we can take our rubber cap off. Pull the zip tie out of place. So I'm just using this access hole here with some needle nose pliers. I have a grip on that rubber plug, and I pulled it out. Once you have both of your springs slipped into your coils, we will push in our airline into the bottom. I started on the passenger side just because I'm going to take a longer route there. Also with the passenger side, you have the exhaust here. So we have this little heat shield that you just put around your line. And then what we're trying to do is stay away from any moving parts. So keep it zip tied down. In between the control arm and your frame here, you do want to leave a little bit of slack because that control arm is going to go up and down as you drive. And I'll tuck this up a little tighter above our spare tire here. So I just made it to our bumper and then routed it over to the passenger side, because around here is where I'm going to end up putting my fill fitting. Then from there, since I know about how much length I'm going to use, I'm going to make a nice clean cut with a hose cutter. Get that cut, make sure your edges are nice, and I did leave a little bit of slack. So we'll do that same process, just feeding our line from our driver's side airbag back here, and then we can tie in our T-fitting. And as far as putting your line onto your bag, you will want to put your clamp on first, so just use a pair of needle nose, get that slid up enough so you can insert it. I did spray our fitting with some soapy water that's bubbling up on me, but we'll just push it firmly up into it and just keep pushing it till it's all the way seated as far as you can get it. And once that's seated, open up our clamp and put it up, and that's going to hold our line. Now we need to find out where we're going to install our fill fitting. In the instructions, they have you pop out one of these push pin fasteners. The fascia in the instructions is a little bit different than ours, so I'm actually not going to use one of those. I'm just going to drill a hole out. I just found a drill bit that matched up pretty close to our fitting, and right here will be a good spot for us. Just make sure there's nothing on the other side, like wires that you could damage. Then we'll drill through. Now before we push our fitting into place, we'll need to thread on a nut, leave a few threads on the backside, and then slide a star washer onto it. Then we can slide that through our hole. And on the outside, push your rubber washer on, followed up by a flat washer, and then thread the nut on. And then we can tighten that down with a 1/2 inch socket. Now I cut a piece to go from where I have my T to our fitting, and I've already connected our other two lines here, and eventually I'm just going to zip tie this fitting up. But these are pretty tight as far as getting the hoses on. One thing I recommend is putting some low heat to the hose, just being very careful not to let it melt, but that makes it a little more malleable so you can work it on. And if you get stuck, you can apply a little more heat. You just have to be careful while you're pushing, because you can give it a twist and end up popping a hole through it. And of course, as soon as you get it all the way on, we can just take our pliers, squeeze our clamp and move it up, and then install into our fill fitting the same way. Now we'll take our air gauge and fill our bags up to 30 psi. Once we have them filled up to 30 psi, we'll want to spray all of our connections down with some soapy water and double check if we see any bubbles popping up. That means there's a leak. So we'll just disconnect and recut our hose and reconnect and then test again. I'll start filling ours up now. And once we've verified that there's no leaks, we're ready to hook up to our trailer and hit the road. So that's going to do it for our look at and installation of the Airlift 1000 air helper springs on our 2018 Nissan Pathfinder.